I'm Michael Strong with When School's Not Working, where we discuss diverse pathways to give your child a wonderful experience through K-12. I'm also the founder of the Socratic Experience, a virtual program for intellectual, creative, and/or entrepreneurial children who may not be satisfied by conventional schooling. And before I have the pleasure of introducing our guest tonight, I want to pass it off to Matt Barnes.
Thanks, Michael. Good to see you guys again. I am Matt Barnes. I run The Education Game. It's a consulting service that works with parents to help parents figure out the best plan and pathway for their kids. I'm actually in a hotel, just dropped my son off, my oldest son off at the University of Virginia this weekend, and so are on our way on our drive back today. So it's great to be here with you guys again.
Cool.
Now just launching. Yes, I'm Catherine Ferriss, founder of Workspace Education, and 100 Roads, our research and development organization, and we're just about to launch our brand new virtual campus for teenagers. Really excited about that, but also very excited to talk to our guest tonight, Trevor. So Michael, if you'd like to introduce Trevor.
Sure. So Trevor, like many of our guests, claims that he's not an expert. I think we have the world's leading experts in education on this show. So every one of them has just been a stunning expert. So let me talk about Trevor's incredible credentials. So to start with, I think Trevor first became famous for one of the Montessori Madmen, a group of dads who really discovered that Montessori education is amazing. And I, don't mean to make it all about moms, but I think moms sort of led the Montessori movement for a very long time. And so finally, not that long ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, this group of dads said, yes, we get it, and shouted from the rooftops. And Trevor's way of doing that was to create a fast draw, one of those things on a whiteboard and so forth, that is the best explanation of Montessori ever. It got more than 1 million views in a few months, and now I don't know how many millions it has in various languages. So Trevor by day is a pilot, but by night he's the world's best Montessori explainer. And Matt, you didn't get to hear all the Trevor details, but I'll give you a couple more. And Matt's all about parents should have figure out a direction for their kids separate from school. So I'll give you 3 more of his credentials. One is, I remember, I think when your son was 12 or 13, Trevor made an appointment for us to talk about entrepreneurship. And it was Trevor, his son, and I, and the whole dinner was his son and I mostly talking and Trevor just hanging out, mostly watching us. Later, he paid his kids to get bad grades for a while, which I think is one of the coolest things ever. And then finally, he also led a movement for parents to opt out of testing, out of state testing in public schools. So Trevor's a renegade in the best way. And so I'll put it in a provocative way. What were you thinking, Trevor? What's wrong with you that you're not going along with the system?
Well, I tell you what, thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to learning a lot tonight from you three. What was I thinking? In thinking about this meeting tonight that we were going to have, I have to admit that I was a little bit nervous. These guys, I've watched some of your webcasts. I mean, you guys know a lot about education and alternatives and unschooling and homeschooling and all this. And what if they start asking me questions like, I don't know. And then the more I thought about that, I realized, well, that's kind of my parenting philosophy, is really those 3 words. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, and so these things that I've tried over the years are really responses to try to answer that question. When questions come up, and my initial reaction is, I don't know, but I'm interested in my kids. I think they're fascinating people. I want to be the best parent that I can. I want to have the most fun I can being a parent and enjoy my time with them. And so all these little things that we're joking about or we're talking about are really efforts of mine to answer that question. I don't know. So all throughout this meeting tonight, if you ask me a question, I'm going to answer, I don't know, and then I'll try to figure out what I think about it. Or if I don't say that, it's implicit at the beginning of the answer. How about that?
Fair enough. So yeah, what were you thinking? Why not be normal like all the other parents?
Yeah, our education journey, when I think back to where was the beginning of this education journey, unusual education journey we've been on, I really think about the birth of my first child, my son. He was born prematurely at 1 pound 11 ounces. It was
Wow.
a complete shock. He was due in October, and my wife had a normal doctor's checkup in July. So he's due in October. She goes to her checkup in July, and at that checkup, she's getting an ultrasound, and the nurse says, "Hold on just a minute," and she leaves the room, and we know that's not a good sign. They bring the doctor in. He finishes the ultrasound and says, "You guys need to get in your car, drive to the hospital. I'll meet you there." And he was born that day. So he was born in July, due in October, 1 pound 11 ounces. From that day forward, he never met any milestones. He never met the weight milestone. He didn't meet the height or length milestone. He didn't meet the eating, the drinking, the breathing, the heartbeat, the whatever. I mean, nothing. No, he wasn't even on the chart. And so that kind of got us over those months and then eventually years with that as the start. We kind of started from a place of, oh, our journey is different. Yeah. And we accepted that it's different. Okay, our journey is different than everybody else's. Now what do we do? And so I think it was a little bit easier for us to consider education alternatives, because from day one we had started off that this boy is different. Our relationship with him is different. So that was kind of the beginning of it, and I've forgotten what the original question was. So,
well, why not do it the normal way? And actually, this was I had not known this answer, and so this is actually very profound to me that you got started in such a different way, and I could see how that made a difference. But yeah, I'm looking at the end state. Some crazy dad who's paying his kids not to get grades and opting out of testing as a movement. So somehow we have Montessori in between. So maybe walk us through from him not meeting the milestones and seeing things differently to Montessori and then beyond.
Sure. Yeah. And to jump forward to today, he's happy and healthy. He's got a new job. We talked last night. He wanted to, propose to his boss that he work a different shift. And so we talked through the scenarios. Okay, this is how I would talk to my boss and ask for that. And this is how, those types of things. They're all seniors, by the way. My son is 18 and my twins, a boy and a girl, are both 17, and they're all high school seniors. My daughter just walked in from volleyball practice. She's a big volleyball player. My other son, Evan, who you mentioned, Michael, I'm following him on the Air Traffic Control Live app as we speak. He's on a solo cross country in the airplane, flying the airplane down to the beach in Texas and back tonight. So he's on a 4-hour trip by himself in the airplane. So that's going pretty well.
At the age of 18, or is he 17 or 18 right now?
He's 17.
All right, that's cool. That is cool.
Yeah, he's 17. He's got a couple of businesses he's running. He's got a drone photography business and a couple of apps he's developed. So the entrepreneurial conversation that we had a couple of years ago, it's definitely part of his journey. But to fill in the gaps between today and that first premature birth, we had 3 children pretty much very, very close together, and we assumed that we would be in the public school system. It's just what you do. And my wife had gone through that system. I had gone through that system. We turned out all right. Hey, great. Okay, so we were on that journey, and then my wife had a conversation with a neighbor about a local Montessori school. And we had never thought about that, never considered it, had no idea what the word Montessori meant. Went to go visit the school, got a tour of the classroom, and our minds were just blown. And all of the education, parenting thoughts that we had thought of in the years of when they were 1 and 2 and 3 kind of all came together in that classroom, and we realized, everything we were thinking of, this is what we want right here. We want this mixed age environment. We want this environment where a child can progress at their own pace. We want this hands-on learning. We want this feel, this vibe where we love you being here and we respect you, and we can't wait to see what amazing things you're going to do in this classroom today. And so we really fell in love with Montessori, enrolled our children there, stayed there for several years, wrote the book Montessori Madness based on that experience. And then we, due to financial considerations, change of management, my oldest son was dyslexic, and we thought, oh, there's a dyslexic program in the public. Several different reasons, we decided at one particular year to move them all into the local public school. Since then, we've done various options. We've homeschooled for one of those semesters. We had a couple of trips that we went on. We went to India and Europe and that sort of thing. And so we homeschooled for a whole 6 months. But for the most of that time, we have been in the conventional public school and trying to figure out, how do we take the principles that we love about Montessori and apply them to our children's experiences now within the conventional system.
That's really fascinating.
So cool.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that. So what sort of principles are you talking about?
I think one of the, when I think of how do I picture how I view how education should be, or how parenting should be, and what's wrong with it in the conventional system in some ways, I think of two people looking at each other, a teacher teaching a student, or a parent telling a child what to do, or asking if they did their homework or did they do their chores. And I think what's beautiful about Montessori, and what I always want to do as a parent, is not to be in that orientation, but to actually be both be facing the same way, walking with that person. So there's a teacher walking with that student, or a parent walking with that child. You're both together. You're both sharing a space. You're both sharing the experience. You both care about each other. But you're doing your own thing. That the child has his or her thing that she needs to be doing. That's hers or his. It's not the parents or the teachers. So that's their path. They're on their own path. You're just with them. And same thing with the parent or the teacher. The parent or teacher is on his or her path. And I think about that, like when I'm a pilot, so that's my day job. And when I get home, I go away for a week and I come home for a week. So when I come home from work, would it be appropriate for one of my children to say to me, how did you do on your check ride this week, Dad? Did you pass your recurrent training? What was your airspeed when you were going down final? Did you maintain 80 knots or were you 85 knots this time? Last time you said you didn't do this well. Did you improve on that or didn't you? That would just be bizarre. What I would expect my children to say is, it's nice to have you home, and to give me a big hug. And if it's any questions, it might be like, where did you go this week? Did you like the person that you were flying with all week? And so I think those types of questions are the same questions that I should ask of my children when they come home. It should be, tell me about your friend Sarah, or, what did Josh say today? Or, what did you enjoy your day today?
Yeah.
Whatever. questions like that, instead of, what grade did you get on your test? I told you got to get that spelling test up, or whatever. So I think that's how I approach parenting, is beside walking with, instead of teaching or parenting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a beautiful image. I love that. I'm going to actually steal that from you, Trevor. I hope you don't mind.
Oh yeah, sure.
But I wanted to ask some questions. Again, I work with a lot of parents. So most parents are governed principally by a fear that their kids aren't going to be ready for adult life. How did this walking beside metaphor, how did that translate into, I'm sure your desire to make sure your kids are ready for adulthood? And how can they be if they don't follow the traditional path?
Oh man, that's a great question. I feel the fear. I feel your fear. I've got it. I feel the fear too. One of the things
every parent does. It's normal, right? It's normal.
Yep. Yes,
yeah.
It's normal. And when Michael and I were talking on Facebook the other day about a post I made about I haven't looked at my children's grades or tests or report cards, and I've offered them they are welcome to opt out of all state testing if they want. I haven't looked at any of that stuff in 7 years now. So it's been 7 years since I have seen a report card. That fear is still there. So even though I haven't looked at the report card, and even though the fear is less, I do have to admit it is less. It has mitigated a little bit. Is still there. The fear that what if they get a bad grade? What if they fail that test? What if they flunk the grade and have to repeat the 8th grade or have to repeat 5th grade? Yes, the fear is still there. It will never go away. But I'm here to tell you, you can not look at your children's grades for 7 years. I'm proof. I've done it. When you get the whole list of emails, like every day you get an email from the school, hey, here's your child's tardy attended. You just delete it. It just comes in, you delete. So I looked at the first one 7 years ago, realized what they were doing, and have not looked at them ever since. Delete. So that fear is still there. I still want my children to succeed, to be successful at what they do, but I have to give that up in order to enrich in our experience together, and in order to build the parent-child bond that I really think and that I value even more than a good or bad grade on a report card.
But two things I just want to, that I'm noticing, and one is that it sounds like that you got off the conveyor belt of the conventional timing of how this timing has to happen, that you're giving your children enough enough time to bake in the oven, so to speak, to get where they need to go in life. And you've got trust, equal amount of trust. You have fear, of course, because we love our children. We want the best for them, of course. But you also trust that you have enough faith in them that they're going to get where they need to go. It seems. Yeah. You're certainly supporting them in that journey.
Yeah, and you don't, as you know, as you probably all know, you don't know for sure. And let me read to you. I'm going to look on my phone here for a sec. I saved this, knowing that I was going to come on this show. I saved this text I got from my wife the other day. My children are all seniors, so they were doing their senior photos, and we hired a photographer, and they went around to various landmarks around town and took their senior photos. Here's what the photographer said. The children were walking around, and he was doing shots and things. And he said to my wife, "Do your kids get along this well all the time?" He's like, "I've never seen kids like them," end quote. And then later he said, as they were walking around and my children were playing around or playing tag or whatever, he said, "Do they just roll into play like that? Like, you never see that in teenagers." And it was interesting, the points that he picked up was how well do they get along, how comfortable they were with play and with each other, and mixing play with being with adults, with doing a photo shoot, just how it all flowed nicely. The photographer, just a normal photographer off the street, we don't even know him, was pretty shocked just how normal and natural and nice the interaction was with these three teenagers. That's worth more to me than any report card.
Hallelujah. I mean, one of the things,
Bingo.
you know, earlier we had a guest, first we had the parents, the Armans, and then the kids, but their boy was doing international travel when he was like 14. I think he went to Bali when he was 14 or something without his parents. And so when I hear that, you know, by the way, Evan is at 17 flying down to the coast. See, I see those as credentials. I mean, if you can trust your, you know, 17-year-olds to get in a plane and fly, you know, across, you know, Texas, that's a credential. I always evaluate, would I hire this person or would I want to have this person around? And I never look at grades. You know, I'm sure we've all worked with, you know, hire somebody in branding, marketing, real estate, you know, agent, whatever. You never say, what grade did they get when they were in 10th grade? It's just preposterous. And so what's weird is, even you, I'm surprised, Trevor, because I thought of you as totally liberated, but you know, even you feeling this sort of the voice of dark mortar or something in the back of your head. But I take it, well, see, what you're not addressing there is your campaign against the system. So, you know, when you're trying to pay your kids to get bad grades or trying to lead other parents not to test, it sounds like at some point you're kind of almost aggressive about it. So you can talk, sounds like maybe now you're kind of calmed down and less of an activist. Talk a little bit about your activism, you know, ebb and flow of your activism on this issue.
That's a good point. I wrote the book Montessori Madness back in 2009, and a lot of that activism stuff was then 2010, 2011. At some point, it started to feel a little bit uncomfortable to me. And I think it was when my children got a little bit more aware of what it is that their mom and dad do and what they talk about outside the home. And I just got a little, I don't really want to be talking about my kids out in public. I felt like I was violating their privacy to be talking too much about, oh, now they're doing this, and now they said this, and now they're this high, and now they're this, whatever. So yes, I did ease off of the public advocacy for a while, and I could see getting back into it after they graduate high school and move off, and kind of as a looking back to what things that I've learned in the past, I could see getting more involved with it. But it just felt more comfortable recently not to be super head to head with the system, especially publicly. I want to be supportive of where they are. There's 5 people in our family, me and my wife and our 3 children. What I decide is not necessarily what they want to decide. So whether they're in the public school system or not, that's my children's choice. It's not, I can't say, okay, you're going to come out, we're pulling you out of school right now. I'd have to run that by my wife first, you know? So there's other opinions that matter. And to be true to my principles, which are my children are competent to make choices for themselves. If that choice is to stay in the public school, then I want to support that. And I don't want to be going behind their backs and saying, oh, you made a bad decision. See, look how awful your school is. So I don't want to say that. The school is not awful in many ways. It's very mediocre in a lot of ways. But there are definitely some bright spots. There are definitely some wonderful teachers. They have some wonderful friends. There's some great classes even. Overall, it's extraordinarily mediocre. And so I think my job is to support them while at the same time allowing them to have a more bird's eye perspective of education as, you know, you can do public school, but there's also other ways to do it. You know, you can take a test or try to get a grade on a test or on a report card, but that's not all there is to learning. And kind of seeing how other educational options or perspectives fit in, and realize that what they're seeing in their public school classroom is not everything there is to know about learning and education.
Right, right.
Do they have any awareness of the fact that some parents are grade anxious and test score anxious, and that does it ever come up that, wow, these other kids are all worried about that, or their parents are, and my dad isn't? Is there any kind of awareness or discussion of that?
There is. It usually comes out in a funny way. like my kids have never been grounded. They just don't do stuff that would require that. I mean, I think we would just laugh about it if they did so. I mean, I just don't even, they're very respectful. They take care of themselves. They know when they need to get home at night and get sleep for tomorrow. And so it's been kind of funny to listen to their friends. We kind of joke, oh my goodness, this person, your friend is grounded again. You can't go see her. Your friend, oh, he's grounded again. Are you kidding me? So they do kind of see that other parents are hyper focused on test scores and report cards, and they see how silly it is. They all approach grades differently. They do different amounts of homework. Some stay up. My kids stay up later. Some wake up earlier. Some wait till the final day to get it done, Sunday night. Some do things throughout the week. So they're on their own individual time schedules. They weigh grades and report cards differently, I think. I'm just not involved with that part of it.
Yeah, Trevor, what I'm hearing are two elements that are just so essential in every kid, but we don't see it, and unfortunately in many kids, and that is agency and autonomy, right? You're giving them that sense that they can handle things. I mean, you even said it, right? You have high confidence in your kids, but you're also giving them the freedom to make some errors and to learn from those errors. And that creates a really healthy, well-established adult. And it sounds like this is a lingering effect, so to speak, from your Montessori days, where a lot more freedom is given to kids, a lot more agency is given in the Montessori model. Is that, you think, how you were kind of coached or brought into that mindset?
Oh, definitely, yeah. And it's making mistakes is so important. And if you're walking next to your child, you can see them make a mistake. You can be with them. You can experience that mistake with them. Let them know that you're there, and then they can try to fix that mistake. It's not that not that they're performing for you and they've made a mistake, so now you need to come in with a grade or whatever. Those mistakes are so important. And the example I love to think about, and I don't know if this dates me or not. I don't know. Did any of you play the game Battleship when you were a kid?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember the game Battleship, where you have a folded?
Oh, yeah. Love it.
Yeah, and you have several ships that you place here, and there's a grid 1 through 20 or whatever, and A through Z or whatever, and you fire shots. J12, and the other player says whether that was a hit or a miss, and then that person fires a shot, and they can't see where your ships are on your side, and that's a hit or a miss. That's how I think about it. Like when you fire a shot, sometimes it's a hit, sometimes it's a miss. But the amazing thing is that you can miss several times, and those misses are actually extremely valuable information. And you may not even have a hit yet, but you already, because of those misses, you know where the other ships are because of where those misses were. And I love that about Battleship, and I think that's true with should be true with parenting and with learning of any kind. The misses are so important. It doesn't matter if you learn. It doesn't matter if you learn algebra correctly. It doesn't matter if you learn how to spell a word correctly. It doesn't matter if you kick the ball correctly. In fact, doing it incorrectly is probably just as valuable as doing it correctly the first time. And you can build from that mistake. You can build from there, scaffold from there onto figuring it out or doing it correctly eventually. So those mistakes are so important. And that's one of the horrible parts about the conventional system is they just don't allow for that. You continually have little tests or quizzes to make sure everybody's getting the right answer. And if you don't get the right answer, there's a problem. You're not getting the material. You're not blah, blah, blah. You don't allow children to just make mistakes for months at a time. Just let them go. Just let them spell incorrectly. Let them write long stories about purple dragons and what their dreams were last night, and reverse their B's and D's every single time, all 1,000 times that they spelled that word. That's what they're getting from that is so much more valuable than whether the B or the D was the right way.
Bingo.
Yeah,
You
and I'm
definitely
saying,
have a. I'll just quip and then I'll let you go, Kath. I was going to say you definitely have a PhD in philosophy of education. You know, you're on the examining committee for the whole world on this. So, Kath.
no, I'm just saying it's so great that you're allowing them to discover, right, and build their intellectual confidence in themselves that they will discover the right answer and they can get there themselves. And I love that about Montessori. You know, Montessori in the classrooms, they teach little nuggets, and the children have to actually put the nuggets together to make that discovery of that learning, and it gets them curious and wanting to learn more. And you know, I think you just continued that in your parenting, and it's just so beautiful. And I think you're seeing the results.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a question from the audience, and I think you're already aligned, but we'll see what you say. Question from the audience: how did you help your children develop the work ethic that they have so that they are successful? Thank you.
Oh, I'm very glad that they asked that question. This is something we haven't touched on yet that I think is so important, and that's leading by example. I mean, I look up to my mom and dad and the way that they were, and thinking back to my dad when I was 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, he was the coach of our soccer team, and he wasn't like any other coach. He didn't sit on the sideline and yell and tell people what to do. During practices, he did every single exercise. He did all the sprints. He did all the push-ups. He did all the goal kicks and corner kicks and the scrimmaging, and he was right in there with everybody. Out of breath. It's kind of hard to coach when you're out of breath. You guys just go. But being that leading by example and showing the players that as your coach, I'm willing to go through the pain that I'm asking you to go through. In fact, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I wouldn't go through myself. I remember my mom, she got into, became an actuary when I was young. And there's a big, difficult actuarial test that has tons of difficult math on it that she failed. And then she took it again the next year, and she failed the next year. And I remember her waking up at 4 a.m. and putting in a couple hours of studying every day to try to pass this test. And she failed the next year. She failed it 7 times. The test was given once per year. So if you fail it, you don't get to take it for another year. So 7 years she failed it and finally passed it. So when I think about that, and like how do I want to teach my children to be, to stick to things? I don't have to teach them anything. I just have to try to stick to things myself, and try to, not give up, or try to find a way to make it happen, or to keep a positive attitude. All those things I can try to do myself without ever saying those words out loud. And I think that's the most powerful way to teach that, is by example. And even in the classroom, I think as that teacher is walking with that student, I love in the Montessori classroom how you know if a Montessori classroom is going well is if you can't see the teacher. You don't notice that she's there, because the children are just busy doing their projects and working on their things, and they just don't need the teacher. So she kind of makes herself invisible and moves off to the side. I would love it if in classrooms, teachers could work on their own projects. If you're in an English class, the teacher should be writing poetry. If you're in a math class, the teacher should be working on some difficult math that interests her. If you're in a welding class, the teacher should be welding the whole time. So that the student can just come over and watch and see, and what does a mathematician do? What does a poetry person who writes poetry, what do they look like? How do they act? And from that, they can then learn how to do it themselves.
That's so great, Trevor. I think we as parents forget just how heavy a role that we play in the lives of our kids. And for us to look to a school or look to a teacher and say it's their job to get my child ready, or their job to train my child to have a great work ethic, that is really not fair. And I love the story you told about your mom. I mean, what a great lesson in resilience and in hard work and learning from failure and not giving up. That is wonderful. So for the person that wrote in, thanks for the question. But we as parents have to make sure we're continuing looking to ourselves in terms of how we're going to lead our kids and not look to the system to do that for us. So thanks for that story, Trevor.
Yeah, one of another quick story. One of my kids came home the other day and said, I've visited my friend's house like 5 or 6 times now, and every time my son said, every time I go to his house, the parents are in exactly the same position on the couch watching TV. And that surprised him. And the reason it surprised him was because, when he comes home, we're doing stuff. My wife just launched a new software business, Booster Hub. I'll give you a little promotion there. Booster Hub makes software for booster club, high school booster clubs. She's busy talking with the developers in Pakistan who work on a 12-hour shift different. They're in 12 hours off on their time zone. So she wakes up at 2 a.m. to talk to them. And, so he, my kids see that. They see that she's right in the middle of doing that. And I try to stay, try to, if I want my children to read, I try to read my own books. If I want my children to do math, I like to learn from math from YouTube videos or things like that. Like I try to do stuff that I like to do, and hopefully that they'll also like to do those things too, instead of just tell them you will learn to read or you will learn to do math.
So Trevor, this is a good time for you to tell us about your once a month challenge. I don't know if you only did that for 1 year or something, but I remember I'm friends with Trevor on Facebook, so I get a lot of Trevor. So tell us about your once a month challenge or whatever it was.
Oh, that was so much fun. I came across it. It was not my idea. I came across it, somebody else on Facebook who decided to once a month learn a new hobby or a new skill. And that immediately struck me as a fantastic idea. So I decided to do that, came up with 12 things, and over the course of 1 year, did a new hobby each month. So, 1 month was learning to play the guitar. 1 month was memorize 10 poems. Another month was knitting, another month painting. So I tried some things that I thought I would like, and I also tried some things that I thought I would not like. I tried dancing, which I knew I would hate that one, but I tried it anyways, and went country line dancing and things with my wife, and we just made a whole month of it. So a couple things were interesting about that. One was a month was a really good time period to get into something, knowing that you weren't going to be stuck with it for a whole year. You're not going to be in English 103 for a whole year. Oh my gosh, I was going to, it's going to be a month and we're going to be done with it. It was interesting to see how the learning in each month was similar. How little bursts and plateaus, and quick progressions and some setbacks. It was interesting to experience that. And it was also interesting to learn that there were a couple of those months that I really liked. and I couldn't wait for the year to be over so I could circle back and do those again. So it's a really good, if any of you are listening, want a way to generate new interests, new hobbies, try that. Try the once a month, one thing a month for a year, and you'll end up with hobbies for years because you just circle back and do the ones that you like and forget about the ones that you hated and never do those again.
Love it.
That's, yeah, I will tell you that, who's the guy that wrote the 4-Hour Work Week? Remember,
Tim Ferriss.
Tim Ferriss, yes, Tim Ferriss. So we've been with my kids, we've been working on this 3-month deep dive, and every 3 months it circulates out. And I think actually a month is probably better. It's a little tighter, but a great way to expose kids to lots of different ideas and lots of different experiences. And if they get done with that month and they really like it, there's no harm in continuing on. And so that was kind of the deal that we've had. So I love that, Trevor, and I'm gonna probably shorten the time horizon on that. So thank you.
Yeah, the way back in 8th grade, I think it was, I remember having this one little 6-month class. It was very unusual for the school. It was a very conventional public school I was in, but they tried this one thing with about 10 students, and I was lucky enough to be one of them, where they brought in a teacher and you learned a new, but it was a language teacher. You learned a new foreign language every 2 weeks. So you did 2 weeks of Italian, 2 weeks of Spanish, 2 weeks of French, 2 weeks of Japanese, 2 weeks of Chinese. And I loved it. I loved it. Hated all of my other classes. Just hated public school. But that was one class that I really liked. And I think one of the reasons was you couldn't really have a test on something that you were learning for 2 weeks. You know, you couldn't really, it was short enough that you were just diving in, taste it and get out. And there was something about that was really fun, and that has stuck with me for a long time.
Did you do those classes every day, the language learning? Was it like a
language? I assume it was every day. Yes, I think so. I think it was every day for 6 months.
Like 10 days of each, I guess 10 weekdays of each, for like an hour or something like that.
Yeah, so you had just enough time to learn your colors and dog and cat and mother and father, and boom, move on to the next one, you know? Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm going to go back to something that you said earlier, which is, before the call, you were talking about a lot of people are dreading adolescence, teenage years, and now you're pretty much through it, and it's been gone really well. So I think some of this is what would motivate parents to kind of try a new path? And Matt's always trying to get parents to, I think we're all trying to get parents to go in a different direction. And so many, I think, are besieged by this anxiety, test and grade and education anxiety. Can you speak to the kind of happiness you've enjoyed with your kids, and what relationship your philosophy of education might have to do with the happiness you've experienced with your children?
Yeah, I didn't know coming into the teenage years. You hear all the horror stories of how awful it's going to be, and when you have a daughter and you live in Texas, every time somebody comes over, they're always like, "Oh, you better have a shotgun to protect her," and it's a very, there's a lot of fear involved in teenagers, and especially with girls. And as we were talking earlier, it has surprised me that it can be so pleasant. It has been very pleasant with my 3. Don't know if it's luck. I don't know if it's what we've been doing. I would think it's the way we've raised them. But the teenage years don't have to be difficult. I think the key is, do they feel empowered as they're growing into the teenage years? Their abilities grow, their horizons grow, and so whenever they've as they've come up through those years, we've always tried to let them go to the edge, let them go to that danger area, let them stay out later than we would normally think that they should stay out. When my kids had just became teens, 13 years old, we took them downtown to downtown Austin, and we're from out in the woods. We live a ways away from Austin, so the big city is unusual for us. And I was going to meet my fears also, and we spent a whole day in Austin. All morning, we walked around downtown. I showed them where the river was. I showed them how the streets were laid out. We showed them where the Capitol building was, where the University of Texas is. We went and had a breakfast earlier, then we went and had lunch. And then in the afternoon, I was like, okay, so I want you all, each one of you, to try to walk. I'm going to give a point A and I'm going to give you a point B. And I want you to find your way through Austin by yourself, and I'll be waiting for you at point B. And each gave them each a different starting point. We split up, and then I stood very nervously on a street corner, waiting for a half hour or so for them to find their way through Austin to where I was. And luckily, they all showed up. They're all still here. And I remember driving away from Austin back to where we live that evening, and my daughter turned around and looked at the city in the distance, and she said, you know, Dad, this morning when we were coming to Austin, the town looked so big, but now it feels so small. And I thought, wow, you know, she's just had a complete change of her horizon of what she thinks is possible now, what she thinks her competency is. And it was scary. It scared the heck out of me to do that. But I walked them through. We did stuff, you know, how to cross the street, how to look both ways, how to wait for the walk sign. And I, you know, gave them the map. So it wasn't that I just threw them out there in a city they'd never been in before. We did some practicing, and then I tried to push the outside of the envelope, and luckily it was successful. But that sort of thing, I think, builds trust and builds confidence that in the child, I think that, hey, my parents think I'm pretty competent. You know, my parents trust me a lot. And so they kind of live up to that now.
Trevor, this is huge, dude. I mean, that may seem like a small thing. For one, first off, I thought you were going to say that you were hiding behind bushes following your kids, but I'm glad that you actually went ahead of them and waited for them. So I'm proud of you in that regard. But secondly, though, I mean, you really were messaging a ton to your kids. How old were they at the time?
So this was, I called it our teenage initiation. So my oldest would have been 14 and my twins would have just turned 13. Yeah. So what you're telling them is, I trust you. 2, you can solve your own problems. And 3, I'm here to support you, right? And so you communicated all that plus a bunch of other things at the very same time. And that sort of, you know, relatively small activity speaks volumes, because you probably are constantly following that same approach in other areas of their life. You just intentionally did it in this Austin trip. And so for the parents listening, every opportunity that you have that you can say to your child, I trust you, you can solve your own problems, and I'm here to help you. Those are 3 incredible lessons that can really undergird your child's educational experience. So excellent stuff. I'm taking good notes, Trevor. Thank you for that.
I just want to add to that earlier I was going to suggest that the reason one of the reasons your teens turn out to be such pleasant, positive, work ethic, good kids is that you gave them trust and respect. But I was thinking of trust and respect conversationally. What Matt is highlighting is you were giving them trust and respect actually in doing stuff in the world. And that's, I agree, super powerful. I do want to ask a little bit more about the late night stuff, just if you're open to talking about it, because I think that's the thing that freaks parents out more than anything. So you talk a little bit about kids coming home late at night and what boundaries you didn't or didn't set and how all that worked out?
Yeah, sure. A normal night, a normal day here, our kids would, of course, not necessarily be out and about partying, but they go to bed at very different times. My daughter stays up till 1 a.m. and she, you know, starts her schoolwork at 11 p.m. and, you know, my sons are a little different schedule, so they're really on their own as far as how tired do they want to be in the morning. And that's not, I don't wake my kids up. My wife doesn't wake them up. We haven't awoken them for school since probably 5th grade. I think maybe when they got their first iPhone, maybe was when, here's the alarm on the iPhone, go for it, wake up whenever you want to. They make their own meals. They've always make their own breakfasts. They've made their own lunches, all that sort of thing. If they don't want to bring something for lunch, then they don't bring it. Your question was late nights as far as kind of a partying sort of thing. We just have not had a problem with that. They have hosted parties over here several times. They do run in some of the same circles because they're in the same grade, but their friend groups are a little bit different. But they've, we've been open to them having get-togethers here. There's been 1 or 2 occasions where they've stayed, hey, I'm at a party and, but, I want to spend the night over here. And, we've, asked, whose house are you at? Is that okay with the parents? Blah, blah, blah. And then I'll go ahead and approve it. I just have a level of trust in them that if they see a situation that they're not comfortable with, that they'll make the right decision. And I think that maybe is a testament to earlier decisions at age 3 and 5 and 9 and 10, that now when they're 16, 17, driving themselves around, I just feel that they're very competent decision makers. So yes, they have had some late nights. There's been some little bit questionable. Oh, but now, you said you were going here. Now you're going to go spend the night over here. Okay, well, what's going on? Okay, all right. Be safe. Even though they have continued to push their horizons a little bit, I feel confident. I feel very confident in them based on their history of decision making, and it hasn't led me astray yet. So we still have 1 or 2 more years of the teen years, so things could go really off the rails in the next year or 2, but they're looking pretty good so far.
So, Michael, I know we've just got another question that came in. I want to make sure there's time for that. But Trevor, I just dropped my son off at college, and for the last 3 years, he's been demonstrating his ability to manage himself. I can't imagine how anxiety provoking it would be if I was, curtailing his movements for the last 2 or 3 years, and now all of a sudden he's entirely free. So I think what you're doing is wise, because they have the opportunity to learn under your roof and under your guidance. So good for that. And Michael, I think we need to get that last question.
We're very open. We have had very open discussions about sex, about drugs, about alcohol. They know what all the drugs are. They know about alcohol. We've had adult parties here. We have a rockin' Christmas party every year here at our house, and hundreds of people. And that's one of the nights per year that my wife and I really let loose. And this place is crazy. And my kids are right in the middle of it. So they see us. They see. We try to lead by example. We try to have not hide things from them. We try to speak honestly about drugs, alcohol, sex, that sort of thing. What are the effects? What is it? Why do people do those types of things? Well, it's because it feels really good. Why do the people drink alcohol? Because you feel great and you get really talkative and everybody's funny, and that's why. Why do they take drugs? Well, because it's a rush. People love the feeling of taking drugs, and be really honest about them about how pleasurable all that sort of thing is. And then will they say, well, and then when they ask, well, why, what's wrong with it then? And then you can start, well, the reason is the downside of that. So, if you get those good feelings, well, then you also have to deal with this, and look at your uncle such and so, or your aunt such and so, or your grandmother this or that. Look what experiences they went through. And so that's why we don't do that. That's why we limit our choices to these things. But you're welcome to try drugs. You're welcome to do alcohol, do whatever you want to do. It's just, here's the facts. Here's what will happen if you do that, probably. So here's all the information. We trust that you'll make a really good choice.
So much to unpack there, but we're running out of time, and we do have one more question from the audience. So the audience question is, now that your children are older, how do you see your parenting skills changing in order to help them continue their love of learning and growing as they step in the plane of adulthood?
The point that you make, that the questioner asked about changing, is so important. Yes, your parenting and your techniques and your skills, the things that you do need to change all the time. What's the word? Maybe a flexible routine is kind of a oxymoron. You need to have routine. You need to have things you do, and you need to be flexible about it when the child changes. Our kids, their bedtime was 8 p.m. for several years. And then one day that doesn't work anymore. So now the bedtime needs to be 8:30, and then you stick to the 8:30 routine for a long time. And then you'll realize that's just not working. 9 o'clock needs to be so in other examples as well. But I think the word there, that change, as a parent, you have to be willing to make changes to the healthy routines. You need routine. Children need routine. They love routine. But then you need to be able to change that as they grow.
So we've got so much to unpack. We have to have you on again another time, Trevor. But we've got the Cass question and then the Matt question. So Cass, do you want to give him the Cass question?
Well, I always have the same question. And, I think of those people who are outside the school system, maybe, they've decided that they don't want to be in conventional school, and they would like sort of things to exist in their towns and society where their children can, have more of an educational experience. So I'm just curious to see, if you were homeschooling or you were outside the school system, what sort of things would you need in your town, do you think, to really support your children in their education?
Oh, would love to see more apprenticeships, mentorship programs. Would love to see that. One of the great things about the public school system is how much money they have available to put towards things. I mean, some of these school districts have, one of the programs at our school is building an airplane. It's the aerospace engineering program, where they actually literally build an airplane every year. Those types of mentorship programs, they bring in older folks who have worked in metal work, or have worked in the aerospace industry, or worked in these other fields, and they mentor these students. Why can't we open that up to more people, to make it easier to have mentorships and apprenticeships all the way down to age 5? Why wait till you're a senior in high school to have this awesome program? So I would love to see more mentorships, apprenticeships, those types of programs.
Great. And now the Matt question to take us home.
Yeah, and Trevor, you may have just answered it, honestly, but I usually ask our guests if they could change one thing about the educational system, what would that be? And so I'll put it to you. How would you answer that?
Mixed age classrooms. That's the fundamental, to me, in my reading of Montessori, that's the fundamental principle of the Montessori philosophy, is mixed age classrooms. Without that, you got nothing. You have to have a mixed age classroom in order to see so the child can see how older people do it, so the child can learn how to teach younger people. And key to this is so you can get the teacher out of the way so that learning can happen. So the teacher is able to prepare the environment. You have a mixed age class, and the teacher can get out of the way so that the children can learn stuff. So I think all of the other wonderful things about Montessori, or even homeschooling or unschooling, all those other things, the key part of that is a mixed age environment, whether it's in the classroom or whether it's outside the classroom with older brothers, grandparents, mentors, neighbors. That's the key, I think, mixed age classrooms.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Trevor.
So many words of wisdom, Trevor. So yeah, let's do barbecue in Lockhart sometime soon. And delightful evening with Trevor Eissler on When School's Not Working. I'm Michael Strong, founder of the Socratic Experience. Thanks, and join us next week for another amazing guest. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys. Take care.